Intuition is the preference for seeing the world in terms of abstract possibilities. When I have taken people through the Myers-Briggs test, one of the illustrations I would use is this. If someone cannot decide if they are an intuitive or a sensor, I would say when you were a child and your family had a kitchen or a dining room and it had a table, a kitchen table or a dining table. Now, if you could do anything you wanted with that table when you were a child, was it a place to eat and work, or was it a fort? I know I turned every table I could, every piece of furniture I could, into forts because I didn't like their sensor realities and I preferred to broadcast an intuitive idea onto them. And forts are much more interesting than homework or lunch. And apparently I had very tolerant parents because, they bought the table for table things. So, how does an intuitive enter the church and experience its receptivity to his or her functions? I don't want to jump too far ahead to talk in the next video about sensors, but the very nature of having a tradition is to be sensor oriented. Intuition and tradition are almost mortal enemies in the sense of how they function in terms of response to situations. However, I have noticed a few places where intuition is valued and useful within the church, allowing more intuitive types to have a participation and a sense of engagement. First of all, one specific stage of church planting. I have had the honor of knowing many church planters, having them as friends and picking their brains. I was briefly, about 4 years of my life, involved in a church plant of which Jesus was the leader, I was the lowercase L leader, if Jesus is the uppercase L leader. Nonetheless, meeting many church planters and befriending them to some extent, I was aware there was a very standard formula for how they did things. Now, many of them were in one denomination. There was a very standardized formula, and the formula seemed to, it irritated me that you could formulatize something as dramatic and powerful and visceral as the continuance of God's kingdom. Now, in retrospect, I think if it works, it works. But at the time, I was a much more easily engaged person with offense to things. And so what I would notice is these church planters would have brilliant, creative, beautiful ideas for names. Greek words and Hebrew words and concepts. And I'd be so intrigued by the name, which was absolutely intuitive, absolutely abstract language use. And then because of my friendships with these people, I would be able to go see first meeting, second meeting, third meeting, and go, oh, wait a minute. The name's the only intuitive thing about it. Everything else is exact same outlay of resources, same schedule, same way of doing things. As if there was a fear that if you allowed structural tradition to fall apart, that you might as well just be throwing your money down the toilet as far as the resources involved in beginning a new church. Nonetheless, though, I definitely noticed there was an abstract language use and an intuition involved in the naming of church plants. If to some extent, and that would give people the impression there was this great intuition and creativity in the overall process, which there was not. They'd say it's absolutely unique and absolutely different, and you'd arrive and go, wait a minute, this is just like the other thing, different name, different talking head, different name. So There is also a great deal of value placed in intuition, abstract thinking, um, among those that are apostles and prophets. Using Paul, he's such an amazing user of language, such an amazing and natural user of analogy and metaphor, and rhetoric. Um, Such a beautiful sense of language that I don't think works at all unless he's some kind of intuitive. My hypothesis about Paul has always been ENTJ, or perhaps INTJ. That's difficult to prove, but the language skills are just profound. Um, and the same would go with prophets, especially the ones that are functioning in the creative arts. Um, those being callings that are less honored at the present time and sometimes even resisted or rejected from the present church complicates things more. Yes, you can find your sense of calling. Can you find a place where that calling will be honored? I don't know. And then thirdly, very much along the lines of Paul's language use, I think that we see that there are teachers who can use intuition and use that brain function for creativity and for abstract language use and the same kind of things that Paul did with analogy and metaphor and rhetoric. To a great extent, that function of intuition will be ignored if it does not come with something that really supports the sense and vision of that group of people, which is tragic because God gave you that brain function for His glory, and it's meant to function as part of your personality, which is meant to function as part of how you serve God and His people in the context of the local church. If I have blessed you or encouraged you, please like and subscribe.